Earlier this week, AusGamers conducted an interview with Bethesda's own Mark Tucker. This interview answers a great many questions revolving around the future of Fallout 76. As such, there is a lot of things to cover here, so let's get started. Mark Tucker started off by saying, "A lot of my time right now is spent on planning that 3 and 5 year roadmap. The 3-year roadmap is a lot more understood and known. At 5 years, it gets a little more fuzzy, but we're dedicated to updating Fallout 76. The message to our players is, there should be no reason to think that we're not going to continue updating this game." This is very encouraging as it establishes a few things. 1, there's an immediate plan in place for the next 3 years. 2, there are plans that go out as far as 5 years. And 3, we finally get an answer to who is in charge of Fallout 76. We kind of already figured that Mark was the de facto game director, but we never got confirmation from Bethesda. Now, this article titles Mark as the director of Fallout 76. We all know the game has come a long way since the dark days of its troublesome launch. The game is far more stable. It has many quality of life improvements, and tons of content has been added. The one thing that is clear, this year's roadmap is packed with public events. This appears to be this year's focus, with one notable exception, that being the Pit DLC. We are all very excited for this, and in the interview, it is one of the key points of discussion. The first question, Fallout 76 has come a long way since launch. How do you see its evolution from its launch state to Wastelanders, Steel Dawn, the arrival of Fallout Worlds, and where the game is headed in 2022? Tucker said, "It's a very different game these days from where it was when it launched. We're constantly evolving 76. We're looking for what our players are doing, what they're asking for, and we try to react as best as we can to player feedback and address the things that they're trying to do and wanting to do. Of course, we have our own longer-term plans, but this year's roadmap is also a direct response to player feedback. A consistent piece of feedback that we've been getting for a while, that players want to see some new public events in the game. We've definitely put a lot of effort in making sure that we can add a lot of new ones, including a region boss at the end of the year. Something that a little more recent, we made additions to Fallout Worlds as a direct response to player feedback, where you can now earn score by playing in Fallout Worlds. A lot of the new settings we added were also in response to feedback. The game is going to continue to change and evolve based on what players are asking for and what they're doing. So what Mark is trying to say here is that they are trying to implement what the community is asking for. The ability to earn score in Fallout Worlds is a good start, but I don't think that players were asking for that alone. Most everyone wants character progression to be able to transfer from adventure to Worlds and vice versa. I hope that is the next move made for Worlds. The next question asked, switching things back to this year, the first big update has a new public event based on aliens and UFOs, things that have been part of the weirder and more comical side of Fallout. How does that fit into Fallout 76 from a thematic point of view and as a new type of event? The idea of the alien invasion has been one we've been talking about for a while. Even before launch, it was an idea that was one of those things that we thought would be cool. But we wanted to do it right, and we wanted to pick the right time. We also wanted to be very careful about how we handled aliens because there's this mystery, and it sits a little more on the lighthearted side of the Fallout franchise. And with that, we realized that maybe it wasn't something that would be there all the time. So we opted to create a seasonal event where it's time limited, but bigger than what we've done before. For many of the team, it was a passion project, and when you get people really excited about something, you tend to do some fun and wacky things. So we also have a bunch of different random encounters that are fun that you'll just kind of run across. and they'll shed some light on some of the things the aliens are up to. We added new alien enemies too. We have the one from Fallout 4. We also reintroduced the drone that showed up in Fallout 3's Mothership Zeta DLC. The new alien, the Alien Invader, is this little alien dude inside a mech suit, and you can see his hands on the joysticks. That was really fun to add. We wanted to have fun with it, and we wanted to make it like a full-scale invasion. Other public events, instead of having normal enemies, will have aliens invading in them. So Mark addressed the new seasonal event here, and none of this is new information since we have been able to play this since the March 1st update. He did, however, make it sound as though there may be some more plans for the aliens in the future, so that could be interesting as time moves on. The interviewer asked, Fallout 3 is going to be a major influence this year, with the pit expeditions coming. Leaving Appalachia is no doubt a big change of pace, even just visually. How did the team land on the pit and the idea of missions outside the main map? Why the pit? Well, one of the big goals for this new feature called Expeditions was to allow you to visit different locations in the Fallout universe, and that's something to keep in mind because Expeditions is a feature in and of itself. The first location we're going to visit is the pit, and we chose the pit for a number of reasons. First, it's one of those fan favorites within the IP. Also, it has a great contrast between what you see and experience in Appalachia. It was important to us to really fulfill the fantasy of, I'm not in Appalachia anymore. We wanted this first expedition to be dark and gritty and have that this is a dangerous place tone. The pit checked off all the boxes, and it's interesting to revisit a place we've seen earlier in the Fallout timeline. It's also fun to bring back some of those things that fans are familiar with, like trogs and autoaxes. So right here, Mark is saying that they wanted to send us to places we all knew about and would love to see at an earlier point, not long after the bombs fell. He is right, the pit is definitely a good choice because it is arguably one of, if not the best DLC in the franchise. The question that followed is, what's the overall goal with missions in Fallout 76? Expeditions or missions present a different play loop than what we've had before. We're pushing this idea of challenging missions that are replayable, but replayable with a lot of variety. Something that's been a core design pillar for us is that we want to make sure that every step of the way it still feels like Fallout. That you're going to these interesting locations so there shouldn't be any time pressure and you should still feel like you can explore these areas and find interesting lore and discover a lot of environmental storytelling. But it's not going to be like previous DLC from other Fallout games where there's a whole other map you can stay in. We're always going to have Appalachia. At the edges of the map, you're going to see indicators for all these places you can go, where initially that'll be the pit. How you go about getting there and being assigned a mission, we're going to explain all of that in the future. Of course, we were also concerned about fragmenting world populations and things like that, but ultimately, we want players to have a place to go back to, and with that, we have a new hub that we've created in conjunction with the storyline for the pit and all of the future expeditions. This part was very encouraging to hear. Like many of you in the community, we all have been worrying that Expeditions was going to end up being like daily ops. This is clearly not the case, as it has been explained. In fact, it sounds more like I originally thought it was going to be when it was first announced. This makes me very happy and I can't wait to see it. The next question that was asked, as a Fallout fan, I love exploring the map and the environment, and on that front, Appalachia is huge in terms of real estate. With Wastelanders, we've seen fundamental changes to the landscape. There's been seasonal changes, and now this new hub. Is the world of Appalachia going to change and evolve over time, whether that is seasonal or permanent changes? That's something that we have been and are actively doing. It's rare for us to have an update where we don't modify or alter or change something in the world. Our Brotherhood of Steel update completely changed Atlas to become Fort Atlas. Things that we are doing in this year's roadmap are still very much in line with that. All of that content that's going to take place within Appalachia is based around public events, but there are changes that we are making for expeditions. There are some challenges when we start changing things in the world because we have to make sure we do our best to preserve all of the previous content that has come before. It's a big map, but almost every location has some content associated with it, whether it's a main quest, a daily, or even an event. It's actually hard for us to find locations that are relatively safe for us to go in and make changes. The last update of the year, Nuka World on Tour, it's got to show up somewhere on the map, right? And it's going to look like a traveling roadshow when it shows up. Yes, we have seen many changes to the world map and locations throughout the map as we have gotten new updates. Every update brings some sort of changes to the map. Sometimes it's a subtle change, sometimes it's a major change. But Mark's statement here is very telling. He said that Expeditions is going to have even more changes than ever before. He also touched on the Nuka World on Tour update, indicating that it will again make some big changes to the map. The next question has a brief answer. That question was, Nuka World was a fun expansion for Fallout 4. The idea of a traveling roadshow brings up images of carnival rides and attractions and all the excess that you can associate with Nuka-Cola. You're definitely in the correct line of thinking with that. It's definitely going to be over the top. Mark certainly isn't giving us anything here, but he did still indicate that it will be a carnival of sorts. I hope the rides are functional. That could be very interesting. Moving right into the next question. With Xbox Game Pass and the game being available to so many, that leads to new players, even those that aren't familiar with Fallout. Obviously, there's a core community the team is listening to and addressing feedback from. For those that are new, what's the approach like? There's definitely a difference in the types of work and the kinds of things we're doing for different groups of players. With new players coming in, we have made a lot of changes to improve that side of the experience. If you've been playing for a while, unless you've rolled a new character, you probably aren't even aware that we've made those changes. One example that players did notice was that when we made changes to medical items and made them more affordable and lighter, it was a case of, why did you do that? That was for those new players. When we look at making changes for newer players coming in, we try to remove some of the pain points, the friction points that we see to kind of make it easier for them to get into the deeper stuff. For existing players, it's simply about finding and providing more things for them to do because they've put in so many hours and have begun to exhaust the content. And we have a lot of content in the game right now. Plus, all of the quality of life changes that we put in, that just makes everybody's lives better and improves the play experience across the board. That question was followed by, quality of life changes are welcome and something we've seen drop regularly. Looking at Fallout 76 as an online experience, it's built on technology that drove Fallout 4. Does this introduce a new layer of difficulty when tackling new features or quality of life changes? Are there some things that the team and the engine simply cannot do? Sometimes changes can be tech constrained. Sometimes we won't do something because it's a big departure from what Fallout is. An example there would be, wouldn't it be easier to communicate certain things within the game if we used multiple colors in the Pip-Boy? If we went in that direction, well, that's a big departure from what everybody knows and thinks of when it comes to Fallout. There are certain things that are core to the franchise that we wouldn't want to deviate from. As far as technical constraints go, anything's possible. It's just time and people and all that. There are things that have taken a lot longer than we actually thought they would. As part of our recent quality of life update, at the end of the year, we're planning to add corpse highlighting. A simple but pretty big paradigm shift for Fallout. None of the games have had it, but the players have asked for it. It turned out to be a little more of a technical challenge than we had anticipated. We ran into issues trying to get it into Update 32, so we had pushed it to Update 34, where we thought we were good. And then, a horrible bug raised its head days before we were planning to push it out, so we had to pull it. Confidence is high that it'll be in the next update, but that's an example of one thing that is a common feature you see in other games, but it's proven to be a bit more challenging because it has never been done before in this engine. We have stuff in the pipeline right now that's a year away because there's a lot of work involved. This answer gives me hope that the roadmap is not as plain as it seems. It sounds like some of the features that were pushed back could be making an appearance this year as the rollout happens. Corpse highlighting is just one of the many things that were pushed back. Pets. I think we will see more things make it into the updates as they get released, and this year could become the year that I hoped Fallout 76 would have. Now for the last question. Any final thoughts on Fallout 76, the 2022 roadmap, and what's in store? You know, it's always good to remind folks that these are free updates. We're putting out 4 free updates a year with new content. We've got an awesome community that loves our game, and we've got a development team and a company that's very committed. We are doing a lot of specific things this year, but we're putting plans in place to ensure that we have ways to continue producing updates and content for years. So yeah, if you've never played Fallout 76, it's a great time to hop in and give it a shot. I couldn't agree more, Mark. It is a great time to play for new players. Us old-timers may not have much to do, but that's going to change with expeditions, so I say, game on. That was the end of the article, and we did learn a lot from this interview. I believe that 76 has a bright future, and we have a lot to look forward to. With that, this news episode comes to an end. If you enjoyed this episode, give a like, subscribe if you still haven't, and share this with your friends. It really helps the channel, and I appreciate you all. As always, I'm just glad you stopped by, and I'll see you in the next one.